The mile marker 17 tunnel. The man standing in the middle of the tunnel wasn't holding a flashlight. That's what scared me first. Not the blood on his sleeve. Not the fact that he wasn't moving. Just the darkness around him. Total darkness. And somehow he was staring directly at me from almost 100 feet away. Then I heard someone whisper behind me. "Don't run." This happened in eastern Tennessee about 4 years ago. I still don't like driving at night because of it. I'd been traveling alone through the mountains after visiting a friend near Johnson City. My GPS lost signal during a storm, and I ended up taking an old back road through the hills. Barely any traffic. No houses. Just trees and sharp curves hugging the side of the mountain. Rain hammered my windshield the whole time. Around midnight, I saw a sign for a shortcut route through an abandoned rail tunnel. It looked old but open. The map on my phone showed it connecting back to the highway faster than going around the mountain, so I took it. Big mistake. The tunnel was narrow. 1 lane wide. Stone walls black with moisture. Water dripped from the ceiling onto my hood as I rolled slowly inside. My headlights barely reached the other end because the tunnel curved slightly halfway through. Then my radio started crackling. At first I thought it was interference. Then I realized I could hear voices inside the static. Not words exactly. Just low talking. Multiple people. I turned the radio off immediately. About halfway through the tunnel I saw the man. Standing dead center. My headlights lit him up suddenly, and I slammed the brakes so hard the car skidded sideways on the wet concrete. He wore a dark jacket and jeans soaked with water. One sleeve looked black and sticky near the wrist. His head tilted slightly like he was confused to see me. But he didn't move. I rolled my window down barely an inch and shouted if he needed help. Nothing. He just stared. That's when I heard the whisper behind me. "Don't run." I nearly crashed trying to turn around in the seat. Nobody was there. Back seat empty. The whisper had come from outside the car somehow. Right beside my rear door. I locked the doors immediately. Then another voice echoed through the tunnel. "Turn the engine off." A second later, another voice from deeper in the tunnel repeated it. "Turn it off." I looked back at the man ahead of me. Still not moving. Then my headlights caught something beside the wall. Wire. Thin steel wire stretched low across the tunnel behind my car. I hadn't noticed it when I drove in. Someone had pulled it across after I entered. My stomach dropped. I realized this wasn't random. The man in front of me slowly raised one hand. Not waving. Signaling. 3 flashlight beams clicked on deeper in the darkness behind him. People. At least 3. Maybe more. I threw the car into reverse instantly. Tires screamed against the wet ground. The side mirror smashed against the tunnel wall as I backed up fast toward the entrance. Then shapes started moving. Men running. I saw one carrying something long, maybe a pipe or a rifle. Another had a flashlight bouncing wildly as he sprinted. The wire behind me snapped loudly under the rear tires. Someone yelled. Then something hit the back windshield hard enough to spiderweb the glass. I kept reversing. Fast. Too fast. The rear wheel clipped the tunnel edge, and I felt the car drop hard into a drainage ditch running beside the entrance road. The engine stalled. Everything went silent except rain hitting metal. I tried restarting the car. Nothing. Then I saw flashlight beams emerging from inside the tunnel. Coming closer. I grabbed my backpack and crawled out the passenger side into mud and pouring rain. My flashlight shook so badly I could barely hold it steady. The woods beside the road were steep and thick with brush. I climbed blindly uphill, slipping on wet leaves and rocks while the beams searched below me. I could hear them talking. Calm. Not rushed. Like they'd done this before. One of them said, "He went up." Another answered, "Dogs." "No. Too wet." I hid behind a fallen tree for almost an hour without moving. Rainwater soaked through everything. My legs cramped. Every tiny sound in the woods made me flinch. Then I heard footsteps nearby. Slow. Careful. A flashlight beam swept across trees maybe 20 feet away. I held my breath so hard my chest hurt. The man stopped. I could hear him breathing. Then, another sound echoed through the woods. A car engine. Far down the road. The flashlight snapped away immediately. Voices shouted below. Doors slammed. A few seconds later I heard vehicles speeding off. I stayed hidden until daylight. When I finally climbed back down, my car was still there near the ditch. Driver door hanging open. Backpack gone. Phone charger gone. Glove compartment emptied. But that wasn't the worst part. Near the tunnel entrance, I found fresh scrape marks where the steel wire had been tied around metal hooks drilled directly into the stone walls. Permanent hooks. Like they'd been using them for years. Police eventually searched the area after I reported everything. They found evidence of robberies connected to illegal road traps in remote mountain roads, but nobody was arrested while I was there. One officer quietly told me something before I left. A truck driver disappeared near that tunnel 8 months earlier. They found his vehicle abandoned. No body. What still bothers me most isn't the men. It's the whisper. I know what I heard. Someone stood beside my car before those lights came on. Close enough to fog the glass. And sometimes when I wake up suddenly at night, I still hear that voice in my head exactly the way it sounded in the tunnel. Calm. Patient. Don't run. The hollow below Black Elk Ridge. The voice outside my tent whispered my name at exactly 2:13 in the morning. Not yelled. Not spoken normally. Whispered, slowly, like whoever said it was smiling. I froze the second I heard it because I hadn't told anyone where I was going. Not one person. This happened in western South Dakota near an old hunting route a few miles north of Black Elk Peak. I'd taken a week off work and decided to spend 3 nights alone in the hills before winter hit. The area wasn't popular that late in the season. Most campsites were empty. Rangers had already closed off some roads because snow was expected soon. That was exactly why I went. I wanted isolation. The first day felt normal. Cold wind. Empty trails. Dead leaves everywhere. I hiked nearly 10 miles before finding a small clearing beside a dried creek bed. There was an old stone fire ring there, probably left by hunters years earlier. I set up camp before dark. Around sunset I noticed something strange. No animal sounds. Not completely silent, but wrong. No birds. No insects. Nothing moving in the brush. Just wind. That night I sat beside the fire for maybe an hour before crawling into my tent. I remember hearing branches snapping somewhere uphill, but I assumed it was deer. Then I fell asleep. Until the whisper woke me up. Daniel. My eyes opened instantly. I didn't move. The voice came from just outside the tent wall near my feet. Daniel, you awake? I stopped breathing. Nobody should have known my name. I slowly reached for my flashlight but didn't turn it on yet. I listened carefully. Nothing. Then I heard footsteps circling the tent. Slow. Crunch. 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 Whoever it was dragged their boots through the leaves instead of walking normally. I finally clicked the flashlight on and aimed it toward the tent fabric. I saw a shadow pass across the nylon. Human. Tall. The footsteps stopped immediately after the light came on. I shouted, asking who was there. No answer. A few seconds later I heard movement retreating into the trees. Fast. I stayed awake until sunrise holding a hunting knife like an idiot, barely blinking. The next morning I searched around camp expecting to find footprints from another hiker. Instead I found 3 things. Boot prints. Cigarette butts. And a little pile of small white stones stacked beside my tent entrance. 5 stones. Perfectly balanced. I packed most of my gear right then because something felt seriously wrong. But before leaving, I noticed another trail farther uphill behind my campsite. It wasn't marked on my map. Fresh boot prints led up there. Curiosity got the better of me. That decision still bothers me. The trail climbed through dense pine for almost 20 minutes before I started seeing trash. Rusted cans. Torn tarp pieces. Empty food containers. Then I smelled smoke. Not campfire smoke. Burned plastic. I crouched behind a fallen tree and looked downhill into a shallow hollow hidden between the rocks. There were tents down there. 5 or 6 of them. Not camping tents exactly. More like makeshift shelters built from tarps and branches. And people. At least 4 men. One of them was skinning something on a folding table, while another carried armloads of stripped copper wire toward a truck without license plates. I remember feeling immediate panic because I realized this wasn't some random campsite. These people were hiding out there. Then one of them looked directly at me. I don't know how. I was hidden well. But he saw me. The man slowly stood up from the table without breaking eye contact. Then he smiled. Not angry. Not surprised. Just calm. Like he'd been expecting me. I ran instantly. Branches whipped my face while I crashed downhill toward the main trail. Behind me I heard shouting. Multiple voices. Then footsteps. A lot of them. I made it back to my campsite shaking so hard I could barely unzip the tent. I stuffed gear into my backpack without organizing anything. That's when I noticed something new. My sleeping bag had been cut open. Long slices straight through the fabric. And lying inside it was another stack of white stones. This time there were 6. I didn't even think after that. I grabbed my keys and started hiking fast toward the parking area about 6 miles away. The whole time I felt watched. Every few minutes I heard movement behind me. Sometimes to the left. Sometimes ahead. Never close enough to see anyone. But always there. Once I stopped walking completely. The forest went dead silent. Then somewhere behind me, maybe 30 yards away, I heard breathing. Heavy breathing. Not hidden at all. I turned with the flashlight and caught a glimpse of a man standing between 2 trees. Motionless. He wore a dark hunting jacket and a knit cap pulled low over his eyes. I shouted at him. He didn't answer. Then another figure stepped out farther back behind him. Then another. I ran. I don't even remember parts of that hike back. I just remember falling constantly and hearing footsteps keeping pace with me in the woods. Not rushing. Following. Like they knew I had nowhere else to go. Near dusk I finally reached the parking area. And my truck wouldn't start. The battery cable had been cut clean through. I nearly lost my mind right there. Then I heard an engine somewhere down the road. An old pickup. Coming slowly. I hid behind a concrete barrier near the trailhead as the truck rolled into the lot with its headlights off. 3 men got out. One of them was carrying my backpack. Another held my flashlight. They started searching around the parking lot quietly, saying my name back and forth like they were calling for a lost friend. Daniel. Where you at, Daniel? I stayed hidden for almost 2 hours in freezing cold while they walked around outside. At one point one of them stood maybe 10 feet from me smoking silently in the dark. I could hear him breathing. Eventually another vehicle approached from the highway. Real headlights this time. The men immediately got into the pickup and drove off through the trees behind the lot. The vehicle that arrived was a county road worker checking snow barriers. He let me sit inside his truck while deputies came out. I told them everything. The next morning they searched the area. They found the hollow. The tents were gone. But they did find stolen equipment, burned wiring, drug materials, and several animal carcasses hanging from trees nearby. No people. No truck. Nothing else. One deputy later told me they believed the group had been living out there for months avoiding warrants from neighboring states. What still gets to me is the final thing they found near my campsite. Another pile of white stones. 7 this time. Placed carefully in a straight line facing my tent. The fence beyond mile 19. I woke up to footsteps circling my tent. Slow, careful footsteps. Not animal sounds. Boots. They stopped every few seconds like whoever it was listening to me breathe inside the dark. I didn't move. I didn't even unzip my sleeping bag. I just lay there frozen with my hand around the flashlight, staring at the thin orange tent wall while leaves crunched softly outside. Then I heard whispering. 2 voices. Low enough that I couldn't make out the words. I had been hiking a remote section of the Appalachian Trail in western Virginia during late October. The weather had turned colder than expected, and most hikers were already gone for the season. That was exactly why I picked that week. I wanted isolation. I got it. Too much of it. The trail that day had been empty for almost 10 hours. No passing hikers. No campsites in use. Nothing except gray skies and dead leaves blowing across the path. Around sunset, I reached an old shelter area near mile 19. The wooden structure had partially collapsed years earlier, so most people avoided it. There was a rusted fire ring nearby, and an old split-rail fence disappearing into the woods behind the shelter. Something about the place felt wrong immediately. Not haunted. Just abandoned in a bad way. Like people had left suddenly. There were beer cans scattered everywhere, but they looked recent. Fresh mud near the fire pit too. Deep tire tracks. That bothered me because no road was supposed to be anywhere close. I almost kept hiking. I should have. But it was getting dark fast, and temperatures were dropping below freezing. So I set my tent about 50 yards from the shelter under a cluster of pine trees. For the first hour, everything seemed normal. Wind moving through branches. Occasional owls. Leaves scraping across the dirt. Then the woods went completely silent. No insects. No owls. Nothing. I remember sitting there with my little stove heating canned soup when I noticed a flashlight far off between the trees. One quick flash. Then darkness again. I figured it was another hiker. A minute later I saw it again. Closer this time. Whoever it was never called out. That's when I packed away my stove and killed my lantern. I stayed inside the tent listening. Around midnight I heard the first footsteps. They moved around my campsite in slow circles for almost 20 minutes. Crunch. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. At one point they stopped directly beside my tent. I could hear breathing through the fabric. Heavy breathing. Then one of the men whispered, "He's awake." Every muscle in my body locked up. I didn't answer. Didn't move. A second voice said, "Check the pack." I heard someone touching my backpack outside. Zippers moving slowly. My knife was inside that bag. I realized how stupid I'd been. Then suddenly, a bright flashlight beam hit the tent wall. I saw the shadow of a man standing less than 2 feet away. Tall. Wearing some kind of cap. The beam stayed there for maybe 5 seconds before shutting off again. Then the footsteps moved away. I waited almost an hour before I finally unzipped the tent slightly to look outside. Nobody. But my backpack was gone. So were my boots. That was the moment panic really hit me. The nearest parking area was at least 14 miles away. My phone had no signal. And now I knew there were at least 2 people watching me in the woods. I didn't sleep after that. I sat there until dawn, gripping the small flashlight like it was a weapon. The second the sky turned gray, I packed everything I could carry barefoot and started hiking north. The trail was wet and freezing cold. Sharp rocks cut my feet almost immediately. About 30 minutes later, I found my backpack hanging from the old fence behind the trail. Every zipper was open. Most of my food was missing. And tucked into one of the side pockets was a folded piece of paper. It only had 4 words written in black marker. Wrong trail. Keep moving. I started shaking so hard I could barely breathe. That's when I noticed fresh footprints beside the fence. 3 sets now. Not 2. I left the backpack there and kept walking. Fast. The woods felt different after that. Every sound made me jump. Every snapping branch behind me sounded like footsteps. Around noon, I came across an abandoned hunting cabin maybe 50 yards off trail. The door hung half open. I only approached because I desperately needed shoes or help. Inside smelled like wet wood and cigarettes. There were blankets on the floor. Food wrappers. Empty bottles. Someone had definitely been staying there recently. Then I saw the wall. Photos. Dozens of them taped across the wood panels. Pictures of hikers. People sitting at campsites. People walking trails. Some looked zoomed in from far away. One picture made my stomach drop. It was me. Taken the day before. I was setting up my tent near the shelter. The angle came from the trees behind me. My hands started trembling so badly I almost dropped the flashlight. Then I heard movement outside. Boots on leaves. Multiple people. Coming toward the cabin slowly. I don't think I've ever felt fear like that before. I ran out the back door into the woods without even thinking. Branches tore across my face while I sprinted downhill. Behind me I heard shouting. Not yelling to stop. Laughing. That was the worst part. They sounded calm. Like this was normal for them. I fell twice smashing through rocks and brush. At one point I looked back and saw one of them weaving through the trees carrying something long in his hands. Not a rifle. Bolt cutters. I reached an old service road near dusk and just kept running until I found a forestry worker driving a maintenance truck. I must have looked insane covered in mud and blood without shoes because he locked his doors when I ran toward him. After I explained everything, he radioed local deputies. They searched the area the next morning. They found the cabin. Empty. No photos. No blankets. Nothing. But they did find hidden camps deeper in the woods nearby. Tarps. Burn pits. Stolen hiking gear. One officer later told me quietly that several hikers had disappeared in that region over the years without explanation. No arrests were ever made. I still think about those voices outside my tent sometimes. The calm whispering. The breathing beside my head. And the note. Wrong trail. Keep moving. I don't hike alone anymore. And I never camp near abandoned shelters. Not after what waited beyond mile 19.